Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to begin to look at elasticity. And we're going to look at this. This represents how price sensitive something is to either the change in the demand, the income, maybe the cross price elasticity. We're going to look at a couple of different areas there. Now if you remember from chapter 5, we began to look at what was known as the law of demand. And we found from the law of demand that as price declines, then the quantity demanded will increase. So the first example that we're going to look at is known as the elasticity of demand. So I want to know the relationship of, for a particular supermarket, and this example is a good foods supermarket. And what has happened is that the grocery store has increased the price from 75 cents to $1.25 per pound. And what they observed was they saw a decline in the quantity demanded from 500 to 100. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to look at percent changes. Now because I have a little bit of a base problem with elasticity, I'm going to try to avoid that with an average on the bottom. So the average on the bottom of the numerator and the average on the bottom of the denominator. Now I'm going to explain the math a little bit here, and you notice there's no divide by 2, no divide by 2 there. The reason that doesn't exist is if I have all this basically multiplied by 1/2 on the top and it multiplied by 1/2 on the bottom, they're going to cancel one out. So when you're looking at elasticity formulas, you're basically just looking at the summation on the bottom. You don't have to worry about that average. So that's just a little bit behind the math, what's going on there. Alright, so the formula for elasticity is percent change. So anytime you see a triangle in math, that means change. So percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percent change in price. So I'm always wanting to know, how is quantity changed in percent in respect to the price changes. So the new quantity level is this 1,000, so I put it in there, and I'm looking at the change again minus the 1,500 in comparison to the summation, and I'm going to divide all of that by the price. So divided by 1.25 minus 0.75 in comparison to the summation. So I'm going to work a little math here. I'm going to get my negative 1/5 divided by 1/4, and what I should get would be a negative 0.8. Now you notice this is a positive number here. For elasticity of demand, I'm going to take the absolute value of it because I know that the law of demand tells me there will be a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So why do I care? Well, you're going to see that this is only 0.8. It's less than 1, and it means they're pretty non-responsive to price changes. So what's going to happen is for every 1% change in the price, the quantity demanded of bananas is going to decline by 0.8. So what this tells me is that the supermarket, they're not really very concerned with the changes in price. Alright, so the second example is that now we're looking at two items. We're looking at apples and we're looking at pears. So the two things of interest is I'm looking at the quantity of apples and I'm looking at the price of pears. And I want to know if the price of pears goes up, does it affect the amount of apples? Now this relationship is going to tell me if they're substitutes, if they're complementary goods, or if they're just unrelated goods. So I'm going to abbreviate for those three things. Again, this is substitutes, complements, and unrelated. Now why is this important for me to know? Well, This is important because I've seen a positive relationship. Now the thing with this is that I've already put it into percent term changes. So I just simply take the 30. Again, this is the percent change in quantity. Remember, quantity is always on the top and price is always on the bottom. So what I find is it's 2. Alright, well this relationship, I don't want to take the absolute value of it. So no absolute value. I want to take it for what it's worth. This is positive, so this tells me they're complementary goods. Excuse me, substitute goods, if I'll get it right here in a second. Now what this means is that if I see the price of one going up, then I should expect the quantity of the other to increase. So for this particular example, if there's an increase in the price of pears, I should see that the quantity of apples should increase. So this is one of our shift factors. The relationship here is telling us again that it is elastic, but what is important from this is I want to know what's the relationship between the two items. Are they supplementary goods or are they complementary goods? Or are they substitutable goods or are they complementary goods? Now let's say that I owned Campbell's soup and I was interested to know what was going on with the chicken noodle soup. So what I have observed is that there has been a decline in income. Now we could probably see that in this area due to the unemployment rates. But as a result of that, what I saw was that chicken noodle soup has increased. So again, what I'm comparing is the percent change in quantity demanded. But now what I'm looking at is the percent change in income. So again, it's still a price level, but this time I'm wanting to know how income affects what I consume. So I see that it has increased in quantity. So I take the percent change, the 150 minus the 100, compare it to the sum of the two, divided by the change in income. Alright. What I find is it's negative. This relationship is important. Again, do not take the absolute value for income elasticity. It's important because what it tells me is that there's a negative relationship, meaning that as my income increases, that the quantity purchase of this item is going to decline. Now what this tells me is it's an inferior good. So as my income increases, I'm going to consume less chicken noodle soup. Now lastly, we have a supply side issue. So let's say that I saw that supply was increasing. From 1,000 to 3,000 V8 juice, and I saw that this was happening as price was going up. This is supporting the elasticity of demand, but how elastic or inelastic is the supply is what we want to know. So what I want to know is what's the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. So this is a QS there. Let's write this over there a little bit so it's clearer. The percent change in quantity supplied over the percent change in price. So what I see is I have this positive relationship. Again, we should always see this positive because the law of supply tells us as price goes up, the quantity supplied will increase. I take the change in the supply, 3,000 minus the 1,000, compare it to my base point here, my summation, and divide it by the change in price. So this particular one, what I see is that it is elastic, meaning for every 1% change in price, that quantity supplied should increase by 2.5%. Alright, so this is kind of significant here. So this tells us how responsive or unresponsive the supplier would be to price changes. So this was an introduction to elasticity.